There's nothing loving or endearing about a mouse. A mouse is creepy and disgusting and gross, and it causes a lot of damage, or at least they have for me. So how is it that Walt Disney made Mickey Mouse into one of the most beloved characters of all time? The answer will surprise you. In this series, we're discussing master storytellers and the techniques they use to tell great stories. Walt Disney, the man, not the big corporation, is a prime example of this. He was unprecedented in his emphasis on imagination and on emerging technologies, mostly animation, to tell stories in a way that was not only great, but honestly world-changing.
Oh, what a beautiful studio you have here, in this office and everything.
Well, I think after Mary Poppins, I can afford a redo.
Walt Disney and his team created this bond by iterating on two specifically powerful storytelling techniques. The first of these techniques is actually one of my favorites. It's focusing on the shared desires that all humans have, but generally keep private. So everybody knows that people want money and happiness, right? We see this all over billboards, and we see this lame story repeated over and over again about people wanting money and people wanting happiness, or buying happiness with money, or trading happiness for money, all these different things. But that story's lame. That's not what Walt Disney did here. Instead, he focused on ones that are shared between people, but we don't normally associate. It's not something that comes up in an everyday conversation, or that we see in most ads or in any lame stories. If you look at his early work and the company's early work, you'll see three of these desires that they focused on primarily. The first of these desires, these really innate human emotions, is the desire to feel special, to be unique, but also to be loved, primarily loved for those differences. So maybe even despite those differences. So you want to be something that's completely unique to humankind, making a difference, but loved for what makes you you. This is something that before him, not many people had touched on in their storytelling techniques, and I think he really blew this away. We see this in the later work with the theme of princes and princesses. The second desire that he identified and really acted on was people's desire to want to be part of something more. Disney focused more on life missions, whereas other people focused on religion or spirituality. What he did was to create missions, be it Pinocchio trying to become a real boy, or be it Aladdin trying to get the princess. He made life missions that his characters could have some kind of intent for, some kind of desire to achieve that, and follow around and react in these make-believe worlds that he created. The last one may be what he's most famous for. It's creating new worlds. It's playing with the unknown. Be this with Peter Pan with people not aging, or Peter Pan again with people flying, or Magic Carpet Ride in Aladdin, or any of the movies he made. He's going into the unknown and playing with that world. He's tapping into these things that people want to do, but we're restricted to given our current reality. Disney first personified these desires in one of his first main characters, Mickey Mouse. So Mickey is quirky, he's weird, but he's looking for love, and that's eventually where he finds Minnie. Minnie is the one who loves him back. He's looking for something more, and he finds that with friends. That's why we get Goofy and we get the Pluto and we get all these other ones, is because he's trying to look for something more than just him. He ends up having to find these friends. And this third one is the animation. Mickey Mouse and all of his friends get to play in this world that is completely unconnected to the world that you and I live in. It's actually quite interesting. I mean, when Mickey Mouse first came up, it was in a medium that hadn't been popularized yet. It was in animation with simple cartoons, like frame by frame drawn. So in these three ways, Mickey Mouse was the first personification of these, but then Walt Disney, I think what made him great and a great storyteller, is he took this much, much further. We first see this in 1937 with SnowWhite and the Seven Dwarfs.
Walt Disney's SnowWhite and the Seven Dwarfs.
We have a girl. She's uncomfortable with her surroundings, looking for something more. This sounds familiar with these desires that Disney had worked with before. She finds some crazy friends, right? There's all the dwarves who have these crazy, spontaneous, very random personality types. She goes into a coma for a while, which is kind of weird, and then she gets woken up after getting kissed by some random guy. These things are a little bit weird, but ultimately we're seeing the same patterns here. We're seeing a girl who feels uncomfortable and is looking to get love for her quirkiness and for the world that she's living. She's looking for something more, so she does it by acquiring different friends, and then she ultimately finds the love that she's looking for. So we've seen the same thing work with Mickey Mouse, and hey, we see it again work with this movie here, the first feature film that Disney Pictures came out with. So after the success of Snow White, we see this again 3 years later. In 1940, Walt Disney Pictures comes out with Pinocchio. So Pinocchio is the same general three desires getting played out again. This time it's by a puppet that wants to be a boy. So just like Mickey, just like Snow White, it's a character that feels uncomfortable with their place in the world. They're looking for something more full. They do this by finding other friends. These friends happen to have all these magical abilities and just bizarre ways of living and personality types. And ultimately, throughout this journey, Pinocchio, in this example, finds what he's looking for and gets loved as a real boy, as this movie goes. So, as the history books would tell us, Pinocchio was a huge success. Disney and his team have now come up with these desires and these central themes that have worked. The audience is really identifying this, and it's a great form of storytelling. So what they do is they continue out on this, and they continue to iterate on this to really get down to what is the core of these stories. So we see this in Bambi, and then Cinderella, and Peter Pan. We see this in Aladdin. The list goes on, right? Disney now has hundreds of movies.
My approach in an Italian movie? This we'll have to see, won't we, Dan?
And what they do, so Disney then takes this success and he adds another story technique to improve upon this. So at the very beginning of Walt Disney's career, the emerging technology he focused on was cartoon animation. It really didn't exist before that. He took that and made it into feature film. So he started syncing this with well, one, for length, and two, with different voiceovers, and eventually with music. After he did that and kind of revolutionized that entire industry, he went through and started focusing on the emerging technology of animation. All of these have a central theme and something that is really, really important for great storytelling. It's suspending reality. So in the world that you and I live in, the one where you're watching me on your computer right now, or phone, or whatever it may be, we're dictated by certain rules. These rules are really annoying, and there's things that we know very finitely. I cannot walk through the wall behind me. But if I change things, if I turn into a cartoon character, or if I turn upside down, or make it very, very apparent that I am a video and not just a normal person living on a day-to-day life next to you, then I can do things that you're just going to understand and let go because I'm in a different medium now. The nice thing about this is that I can challenge rules that you have to follow yourself in reality. So I can go through in a big community of people and just start singing, and it's totally fine because I'm now telling a story as opposed to just being some crazy person. This is something, the suspending reality, that I think Walt Disney did a really fantastic job of. Disney's last great storytelling achievement was something that had never been done before. It was suspending reality while still in reality. So he did this in the form of his theme parks. He died right when Disney World was being first introduced to the public. What he did there was, instead of it having to be cartoons suspend reality or crazy musicals suspend reality, what he did was he actually took people into his own make-believe world that existed in the real world. So you go there and you have Splash Mountain, and you have the Matterhorn, and you have all these other rides where you can be with your family and your friends in our world, the one that you and I share now, but you can do it in a make-believe way. In this way, he was really able to take his storytelling from like an art to making it something that is tangible, something that is that you can experience with other people and actually touch yourself. It was quite an amazing feat of storytelling. So this brings us back to our original question. How did Mickey Mouse become the Mickey Mouse that we all know? Well, it was through really, really good storytelling done by Walt Disney and by his team. Walt Disney was able to create the lovable mouse because he knew that by tying into these deep human desires that we all share, and then suspending reality, that he could create stories that then filled in the gaps. He could tell us stories about ourselves without us being off guard or feeling uncomfortable about it, because reality was suspended. He was just talking about a mouse. It was nothing we had to work about. He touched core parts of who we are through these storytelling, through these shared desires that we all have. And he did it in a way where we didn't feel threatened, in fact, that we could identify with and then sing about and express through all these different ways that we have a Disney characters in our lives today. Okay, that's all the time I got to cover this now. If you are interested in storytelling, if you find this intriguing, consider subscribing to this channel or watch the videos that are to come next. I'll have them in the video description below.